What are we measuring? All we're doing is measuring KPIs, around financial success of the hospital, and we're not looking at client satisfaction scores. We're not looking at well-being, and psychological safety of the team, reward and recognition. Like, if we're not saying those things are important and measuring them, then we can get ourselves into an issue, because that's what we're judged on.
Is there a certain behavior you think we keep rewarding in veterinary medicine that's really destroying veterinary careers?
Some of the behaviors we did, working long hours, I'll say this is I think too, like, working, definitely overworking. I mean, we've all, like, all of us from that generation, but like we all worked, 60, 70 hours a week, at some point, maybe even 80 hours a week, depending on what we were doing. What I will say, though, is that hard, fast, I've talked to a number of veterinarians too, is yes, set boundaries, but don't make them hard boundaries.
Out of brick.
The reason why is, because if you set that hard boundary, it's the 12 days of Christmas. You set the hard boundary. We're not doing any payment plans. We're not giving away any services. When the pendulum swings too far, to the side of black and white, which, again, from a resilience standpoint, black and white thinking is not, is not a resilient mindset. But that I give myself space to say, could I mean, obviously I'd rather go home, but could I do this foreign body that, in general is probably going to, done enough, I can probably get this done and get everybody out of here at a reasonable hour, and help this patient out. And then sit with that, and then tell the staff, when we're doing the procedure, hey, I just want to thank you all for, staying late, and just leaning into that part of it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Another episode of Irreplaceable Truths. My guest today has already been on with me once, and we got into some deep conversation of mental health, and we are going to continue that talk today. He is a leader in veterinary leadership around the country, and also deals a lot with workplace culture. I would like to welcome Dr. Philip Richmond back to the show today. Phil, how are you doing?
Oh, good. Thanks for having me.
How's Florida?
It's not bad. I mean,
you guys dodged hurricanes. You dodged some hurricanes this year.
Yeah, we did. We got we got lucky.
There were some big monsters out there too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Woof. Yep.
So we talked a lot about mental health last time.
Yeah.
And the idea of, they're finding that it starts in childhood. And then, one of the things, obviously looking at your impressive resume, one of the things I just want to start right off with is, the fact that you're with the QPR directive. And I absolutely question, persuade, refer, suicide prevention, 1000% I'm behind. But I have a slight problem, because I feel if the AVMA is offering free QPR to veterinarians, veterinary technicians, veterinary assistants, anyone in the veterinary field, are we a little too far behind the 8 ball when it comes to that? I mean, shouldn't things be done well before that, so we're not getting to that place?
I mean, yes is the answer. The other thing is just I wish we could do all of those things at once. What I would say, and this is, some data that came out of Australia. There's the mental health first aider program, which is even more comprehensive than the QPR course. QPR is pretty specific to someone who potentially is considering suicide. What it did show is that if that's the only thing that's being done, it doesn't move the needle at all, for workplace well-being, for mental health in the, in the area. What I would say is that it's a stopgap. It's definitely a yes and so I hear you. If it was, oh, let's get everybody QPR certified, and that will fix the problem. Like that's folly. Is like, to your point, is we've got to work on, we've got to look at a systems lens. We've got to look through a systems lens. We've got to look at a team and leadership level, and then an individual level, as well, and talking about resilience and that type of thing. So I think you're spot on that if we were saying, oh, this is the answer, is just doing suicide prevention training. If we were saying that was it, and putting all that onus on, one person that's, gets an hour long, training,
Right.
that's not enough. But it is a place to start, as long as that's what we're doing. As long as it's, hey, let's stopgap, let's put something in place that we can put in place now, and then do the hard job of, changing the systems.
So you're talking about
Yeah.
you start there and work backwards.
Well, I mean, because there's, we still have people that are in the system that are struggling. And so if you have somebody that comes in tomorrow that is saying, hey, I don't know if I want to be here anymore. And I'm saying, well, let's look at the system. What I'm really working on today is, changing the structure of, work, and changing how we're educating, our students, and doing all that. I mean, that person needs help in that moment. So that's why I said, as I think, yes, that has its place and is important for, because we're going to have the chance that somebody is struggling tomorrow, and us, turning the system around, turning the Titanic around. I mean, not to be over the top, but that process is going to take time. It's going to take time for us to change, organizational level, well-being issues. It's going to take us time to change even team level and certainly individual level. So, it's along the lines of, my dear friend Andy Rourke caught flack when he put out the Four Eyes Save Lives program, and it was, the argument was, well, that's not treating mental health, it's not treating those things, and that's not what that was supposed to do. Again, it was known that, there's a access to means, is an issue. So it's multifactorial, and so yes, in doing that, there is a chance that then we could decrease, somebody in that moment, picking up, the euthanasia solution or what have you. It's not going to fix the mental health issue in the profession, but it can help that person, in that moment, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. It does. And
Yeah.
it's crazy you just said all that stuff because
Yeah.
I know I'm so I am doing my dissertation is going to be a 2 publishable paper dissertation.
Mm-hmm.
And my first one that's open up to all veterinarians is I'm looking, my independent variables are mental health, and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
try to divide mental health issues personally versus work. I'm
Yeah.
looking at resilience, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
also looking at psychological safety, and
Yeah.
I'm looking at it through the lens of emotional labor and how that's going to lead to stress.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for confirming that. I just, you had no idea, and you just kind of just like you just did part one of my dissertation right there. You just
Well, but
kind
I
of
mean, that's it. What's the name of your show?
yeah.
We're talking about these truths, like, and wherever we're coming from, like, that's the more of us that are, putting that information out, and then getting even more information to solidify it, like you're doing with your dissertations. That's the beauty that we're having these conversations, that, when you and I were, say, talk like two seasoned, veterinarians, in the old, well, when we were in school, and
Yeah.
it's true, we just wouldn't have had this conversation, or we weren't having these conversations to the degree that we are now, around suicide and things like that. Not that they weren't happening, but not to this level and this level of awareness. So yeah.
Well, there were always levels to it, like because
Yeah.
early 2000s, around the Great Recessions where the whole concept of burnout started. And then
Yeah.
after the Great Recession, it kind of became compassion fatigue. And
Hmm.
then
Yeah.
COVID came
Yeah.
along and then it became suicide. But it's also great that society is not looking at mental health as a taboo anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and Simone Biles is the one who really brought it to the forefront when she was at the Olympics. She just
Yeah.
bowed out, right? And
Yeah.
she's like, listen, my mental health was totally screwed. And, people were giving her, flack for that,
Right. Right.
but a great majority supported her. And it was very good to see. There will always be naysayers. There will always
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
naysayers when it comes to that. But I think as the generation, like the Gen X, the baby boomers age out and
Hmm.
the Gen Xers are there, we understand the mental health part, because I think that's when the Gen Xers really started dealing with mental health issues.
Yeah.
But like you look at the Gen Zers now, I mean, it's all over their social media, it's all
Yeah.
over mainstream
Yep.
news. All their
Yep.
friends are probably doing talking about it. It's
Yeah.
not something that people keep to themselves.
Right. Right.
Because I remember you and I talked about having ADHD.
Yeah.
And I think I was diagnosed as hyperactive. ADHD wasn't even a
Hmm. It
diagnosis
wasn't
when
a
I was.
term. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I was just actually funny enough. Like I was just on a couple podcasts, one for a BMC, and we were talking about that, like what it's like to, navigate that. And it was just, early on, it was the report, the report card from, the teacher was like, whatever, lots of potential. Phil has trouble not, not socializing. Socializing was like the thing that was like everybody, good grades, but has socializes too much, or whatever, has trouble staying in his seat, talking to his friends, all that stuff, which
They
spot
must have
on.
just
But
photocopied my report card
that's
sheet.
what I right, right. And it's fun because, then in hindsight it's like shoot, like we all had it, we or not we all had it, but like those of us that had it, they're clear signs of the condition.
Yeah.
It's reproducible in so many of us, and yet it was
And
dismissed. Yeah,
of course, you and I were not allowed to eat sugar then, right? We got to see all our
that's
friends
what
eat.
it was. Right. Yep, that's what it was. Yep, it was sugar. Sugar was the that's I remember that. You gotta stop eating sugar.
Oh,
That's why.
no
That's
more
why.
sugar for
You just
you.
you get the you get
Yeah, you get the
Yep.
keto diet now.
Yeah. So because you said something about what you're looking at
Yeah.
in your dissertation,
Yes.
and so you said obviously psychological safety is one of those things. It's something that not just personally, but the area of studies that that I've done, and the work that I've done, like that is, it's so it's so intertwined in what we do. And what's really fascinating is when we look at psychological safety and then we compare those to psychosocial hazards, which are those things in the workplace that that can negatively affect our mental health, is the correlation. I mean, hard to say causation necessarily, with certain psychological studies, but moderate to significant degree of correlation between when we have poor change management, when we have poor leadership support, when we have poor workplace relationships, and then we compare that to the when we assess psychological safety in these environments,
Correct.
there that's what we have. And it's so amazing that all these, there's just there's a number of different foundational things that need to be done to to bring the system to where we want it to be, so that God willing, we don't need as much QPR 30 years from now.
Right. And you've said in the
Yeah.
past the system isn't broken, it's just sick.
Yeah.
What do you think the diagnosis is when you come to that?
Oh man. So it's just, it's a great question. And at, as just about everything, we talk about, multifactorial. Um, it's, I think it's that it's, it's just not one thing. Go back to the, what can we look at as a foundation? I'm very grateful I get to work with the amazing Dr. Michelle McQuaid in Australia. And and her and then Dr. Aaron Jardin came up with this term, me, we, and us, which is essentially like an organizational psychology. When we look at it, me is the individual, we is the team and leadership, and us is the organization itself. And so when you ask that, it's a combination. I mean, it's a living, breathing being with with a lot of moving parts. And and so I joke, if we're talking about like the me aspect, the individual aspect, and resilience, if the Dalai Lama was put into a his holiness was put into a clinic with with quadruple, he was quadruple booked with one technician. It's possible that his holiness might drop the F-bomb. Kidding, he would never do that. But just meaning there's only so much that individual resilience can overcome systemic issues. Like if I am chronically overworked, if I am not getting reward and recognition, all of these things, like they're really hard to continuously overcome and try to use tools of individual resiliency. However, if I don't have those tools, the system could be pretty damn healthy, but I can't function as well in it.
Right.
And so there's a shared, there's definitely a shared responsibility. And I mean, I throw this number out there. I mean, it's kind of arbitrary, but I've seen other, people smarter than me say it, but about 80% systems, leadership, team level, 20% individual, like resiliency, like that kind of thing. And I think that's probably close-ish, just seeing that but it just can't be, it's not all the system. And this, coming from somebody that's, in long-term recovery, I mean, I really saw how my thinking process, I could make World War III out of you didn't text me back, and it's like, oh,
Right.
that's clearly it's because of this, and then he probably thinks this, and he's probably telling other people about me. Damn it, if he's doing that, like, man, screw that guy, and just crazy thinking. But that's one of those skills of resiliency, challenging those, those cognitive traps that we get into.
Well, it's
So
also a sign of
anyway, yeah.
emotional intelligence too, though. If you got to know how to control
Oh
your
yeah,
emotions.
yeah, of course, yeah. Or at least be be an observer, of them, like feeling it and just being, that's kind of interesting. I'm getting fired up right now, and that has like I can do that now. Let me say that I can do it way better, than I could before I got sober, before I got into recovery. I still can, I can still go off the handle, but my usual go-to is if I start getting worked up and ticked off about something, it's like, I mean, like really, really upset. It's like, that's get, I start going through the tabs that are open in my brain. Like what else is going on right now with me, and that kind of thing. And that is a learned skill of emotional intelligence, that I'm grateful that, I was given some of those tools to, to learn that. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Out of curiosity, how many tabs you usually have open in your brain
Oh,
at once?
ADHD, man. Like, I
Right.
don't know.
Exactly.
Look, yeah, I'm sitting here with four screens, four monitors open, and they all got tabs open.
And the funny thing is, like with I feel as if I work better in chaos.
Yeah, it's
Right. When
well, and it's
something's
true. Yeah,
structured, I lose my mind.
yeah, yep. So we thrive on that. It's like
Right.
the emergencies is, it's the same thing. Like in the clinic, like I really do love emergency medicine, and and there can be 5 rooms going, and during COVID, like I did really well until, I mean, I got burned out. I mean, like
Yeah.
everybody, like a lot of us, but we was seeing, I don't know, we were seeing like 40 like each doctor was seeing like 40 patients a day. I mean, it was just way beyond what we normally did. I was standing in treatment at a table, and the techs would just put a patient in front of me, and then I'd be like, okay, all right, do this, boom, and then they bring another one, bloop, and then put
Yeah.
another one down. But that thinking, that stress, like we, when we've got ADHD, it is one of those things where we usually perform better. But like you said, is like when it's calm, and
Oh,
when there's a an organizational task, like charting. Thank God for AI scribes, now. But
yeah.
that was to just
Oh,
sit down and write
and
up.
when
I
it,
love doing the stuff, but the writing up was it was like pulling teeth.
well, and
Yeah,
if it ever is quiet, I always
yeah,
think that the world is coming to an end. Like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
we're going to go out
Oh
of
yeah.
business. No one's coming in. Don't know what I'm going to
Right,
do.
right.
Like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to pay my bills? Can I pay my employees? That's what goes through my head, and that's how I think.
Yeah,
But I think that's
right.
more the entrepreneur side of me being triggered by my ADHD.
Yes, yeah, and it's also that negativity bias that we have. That's so interesting because I mean we. It's funny that you said because it just happened to me. Like I went into the clinic, I opened up my schedule before I went in. I had one appointment in the afternoon, and I was like, I'm sitting down with the practice manager. Like this is great. Like we never have this. And but halfway through the afternoon or halfway through the morning, I was
It
already
fills up.
fully booked and up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, but I went through that. Like, I was like, oh my God, we need to do this. We need to generate this. We need to do more of this. We need to, and it was like, I didn't need, I didn't need to panic,
Yeah.
on any of that. So but it's funny because that's just where, it's where our mind goes. Go ahead,
Yeah. So is there, you said it's a multifactorial problem. Is there one
man.
particular thing that keeps you up at night that you worry about?
um, geez, one thing. Um, yes, I mean, I will say from a sustainable aspect of the profession, is the concern, and we see this in. I'll say this: we see it in human medicine, and saw it well before we saw it in veterinary medicine. There's a great author, by the way, Dr. Wendy Dean, wrote a book on moral injury, and it's called. It starts off, "If I portray these words." It's about moral injury in healthcare, and really what it's about is about that money versus people or money versus patients thing, and it's not that we can't make, you know, we can't do well in veterinary medicine, but I I want I mean I want what you want. I want the veterinarians coming out to be able to have the same experiences that I did that kept me loving veterinary medicine. Like the things that I can do, I'll just say not forever, but like in the practice that I'm in, I'm in a three practice group or three hospital group. And that hospital, those owners, I said in the beginning, I was like, look, just don't ever let me have to put a PIO or a black cat to, first time black cat to sleep, like over money. Like, please just don't make me have to do that. And they've been really good. And what we found is like, I've never had to do that the whole time I've been there. And we'll set up payment plans, if we need to, but we don't run into those situations that often.
Mm-hmm.
And the times that we do, because we don't have a hard fast, we're like, there's some humanity that's there. And again, we're afforded that, I know I'm afforded that because of the practice that I'm at, but it makes a huge difference, with me being able to go home and put my head on my pillow at night, that I didn't have to make, one of those moral injury, and that's what actually Dr. Dean and I got to talk to her for quite a while, about the similarities in moral injury and vet med. But I think it's that as the sustainability of the experience of veterinary medicine,
Mm-hmm.
is that we get in as wide eyed, 21-year-old. I was a little older when I got in, but we want to save the world. We want to save animals, and of course there's some growing up, and we have to learn that we can't give all the things away, and some of the just good business practices of having a practice, but the ability to be able to do some of those things that expand the experience of being a veterinarian where, I'm really grateful that I'm able to do, X, for another
Right.
vet or for another human being. Go ahead.
Well, the thing is, like, I the biggest kick to the gut is the concept of euthanizing a pet that you could save.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, that right there, it's crazy. And so when I owned my practices, well, the one thing I did the 12 days of Christmas, where
Yeah.
where I would do 12 big procedures at no charge.
Yeah.
Right. And then
Yep.
I actually had people donate suture and stuff like that, but I donate
Right.
my
Right.
time. I paid
Yep.
for my RVT's time. And like I would do a PU, I would do a PIO, I would do
Yeah.
GDV,
Right. Right.
whenever. But I would, and it is so rewarding to the
Yeah.
staff.
Yep.
And of course, everyone's like, "Oh, that's wonderful PR." I never used it for PR. I never
No,
published it.
that's not what. Right.
I didn't care about that. It
Yeah.
was just to give back to humanity for a
Yeah.
skill that I'm blessed to have. That's the
Yeah.
way I looked at it.
Yep.
So,
And one of the things that, on that same note, what we do, at our practice is, I'm really grateful now. I've got two mentees, that both like surgery. So when I came back, I was CVO for a group, up in Michigan for a while, and I came, left for a little while and came back to the practice, and Dr. Ortiz was there, and he liked surgery, and I was like, all right, here's our list. We had forelimb amputation, hind limb amputation, GDV, we had all these procedures, and I'm like, we're going to do all of these. And so what we did is when those procedures came in is then I if the owner didn't have financial resources, and we did this on a number of our amputations, I was like, we're going to make this a teaching case, and that was the how I didn't have to sell it to the owners, but it was like, hey, this is essentially CE. We're going to walk through, the C1, or, see one, do one, teach one. Um, and it was just, it was great. And the owners were, incredibly grateful. And it builds that relationship between me and that mentee that we got to do it. It builds that relationship with the staff. The staff sees what's important, or that we do, that we don't always make, money over people, decisions. And it just means a hell of a lot, especially then when we start talking about psychological safety and and things like that, decisions that are made, in the hospital. So I know we got a little off track there, but it's
no,
just something
well,
as I get older, like I mean, I know you are,
yeah,
I know I
yeah,
am not like the only
I,
one at all,
yeah,
but it's such an important thing. And like you said, like that 12 days of Christmas, like to be able to do those things and to be able to go into that room, and tell that owner, hey, like this, we're going to take care of Fluffy. Like, don't worry about it.
oh,
And just how grateful they are. And,
right,
and that's the spiritual service aspect that doesn't have anything to do. I mean, it sort of has to do with our clinical acumen. I mean, we need to know, how to do it, but
yeah,
that connecting with another human being, like that keeps me going back to work. Those are the things that allow me to love being a veterinarian, and are those are skills of resiliency. Like if I can, and from a positive psychology standpoint, if I can seek out those experiences when the bad stuff comes, because it's gonna, I mean, it's all, we can't we can't shield ourselves, from it 100%. But those experiences with clients and those experiences with, saving that patient and those things, they'll stay with us, and they'll make me remember that I'm a good vet, when I start questioning myself. Yeah, go ahead, man. I
no,
see.
I was going to ask,
Yeah.
is there a certain behavior you think we keep rewarding in veterinary medicine that's really
Hmm.
destroying veterinary careers?
Um, I mean, yeah, some of the behaviors we did, working long hours, I'll say this is I think too, like working, definitely overworking. I mean, we've all of us from that generation, but like we all worked, 60, 70 hours a week, at some point, maybe even 80 hours a week, depending on what we were doing. What I will say though is this: is that hard fast. I've talked to a number of veterinarians too. Is yes, set boundaries, but don't make them hard boundaries.
Out of
The
brick,
reason
right?
why is because if you set that hard boundary, 12 days of Christmas, we set the hard boundary. We're not doing any payment plans. We're not giving away any services. You don't get to experience what you did to, help those people. And so like, if I say, yes, my overall goal is I want to have me and the staff walk out of the hospital at 6:30. I mean, that was our goal is, in general, we want to have, we close at 6. I want everybody out at, by 6:30.
Yeah,
We did a
that never
pretty
happened.
damn good job. Well, I will say with intention, we did a pretty damn good job of it. But what always or not always, but then what would happen is foreign body comes in or black cat or whatever the thing is. And when we were in a position where we could do the procedure, and so we would ask the team, hey, who feels like they have the energy to stay? Like, do you guys want to do this or not? Because we could always send it to the emergency clinic, but we would say we just didn't make it a hard fast thing because those owners were so almost every time, the owners were so grateful that we stayed late, to do the procedure or what have you. And we told them we were staying late. Like, we didn't keep it quiet, to them because we wanted them to know too that we cared enough to do that. But I think that's something where when the pendulum swings too far, to the side of black and white, which again, from a resilience standpoint, black and white thinking is not, is not a resilient mindset. But that I give myself space to say, could I, yeah, obviously I'd rather go home, but could I do this foreign body that, in general is probably going to, done enough, I can probably get this done and get everybody out of here at a reasonable hour, and help this patient out. And then sit with that and then tell the staff, when we're doing the procedure, hey, I just want to thank you all for, staying late, and just, leaning into that part of it. But I guess that's your question was what behaviors, are detrimental. I think it is that all or nothing.
Right.
Either if it's I am only going to work 36 hours a week and you're not going to let me, like I'm not going to do anything past that thinking that way, or it doesn't matter, whatever comes in the door, we see it, which was our mentality. And I think both of those, without giving ourselves the opportunity, for flexible thinking, and holistic thinking, is, something that can be harmful.
Well, and you also said the one thing is, black or white. And
Yeah.
people have to
Yeah.
realize life in general are shades of gray.
Yeah.
Shades of
100%.
gray, the 100%. And that is one thing I could totally see destroying them. I'm going to
Yeah.
put you on the spot here and you don't have to answer
Okay.
this.
Okay.
But do you think corporate groups are guilty of that all in, all out, like all in or nothing type mentality?
Um, I think there's the possibility for it. I don't know, the what I'll say that I do, that I also see is that even in big corporates is that there's still a team level, like each hospital can still operate, differently depending on their leadership and that kind of thing. I do think, yes, there is the potential with what, again, going back to what are we measuring? Like if all we're doing is measuring KPIs, around financial success of the hospital, and we're not looking at client satisfaction scores, we're not looking at, well-being, and psychological safety of the team, reward and recognition. Like if we're not saying those things are important and measuring them, then yeah, we can get ourselves into an issue, because that's what we're judged on. As bottom line is that if my worth as a veterinarian is my gross revenue, and that's it, and it doesn't matter how I treat the staff, it doesn't matter, whatever, if I'm a producer, that's it.
Then they
And
love
so
you.
if
The regional
then they
manager
yeah,
loves you.
yeah,
This
right, right. They're
everyone loves you because you're a producer, even
yeah,
though you could be the biggest asshole there ever was
and
and made
oh,
everyone leave.
and how many times have we seen that? Is that you start losing long term
I'm dealing
staff,
that
and then you have
I'm
to
dealing with that right now in my wife's
yeah,
clinic. They already ran my clinic into the ground. Now they're doing it to my wife's clinic, and they're like, "Oh, this doctor's coming in. He's phenomenal." The only reason he's phenomenal is because he is a revenue generator. He has
yeah,
no people skills. He has no client skills. He has no skills with relating with the staff. He just wants to do stuff and do stuff and do stuff. He literally said, if the client doesn't want to do everything on this quote, I don't want to see them.
oh, yeah,
And I'm like,
right.
this is not sustainable. But
Yeah,
according to the corporate, he's a
but
phenomenal doctor.
right, because what are we, again, going back to what gets measured gets managed. And it's like we're looking at that line item. We're not looking at, retention of staff, and how much it costs to turn the staff over and all that may be directly, attributable. What's interesting too is I remember reading that, like, gosh, probably around like when did I start there? So probably about 2014, 2013, 2014. I remember reading, an article basically that your highest producers are selfish. Like the reason why, one of the reasons why they're producers is that they're probably selfish and they're probably not good leaders. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, gosh, like, isn't there a way to do both though? Like, isn't there a way to just, really do good work and like not tear each other down? And so I remember really having that mindset, and we did it. Like
Yeah.
my wife's in another practice. My wife practice is very similar to me. I mean, she is a damn machine. She's just, I mean, she's always a million plus producer. And we listen, we don't just hammer clients. We tell them what we recommend. We do practice, you hear that term spectrum of care, contextualized care. Like we're the coach for the client. Like whatever you can do, it's my job to tell you, here are options. These are the pros and cons. Ask me questions, and if you want to do, the big plan, do it. But where I'm going with that is just, is like, could we start measuring other things, where I'm really passionate about is, other measures of success, that do lead to an ROI. But could we measure some of those other things as well, other than just ACT, number of patients
Oh
seen,
my
gross
God, you said
revenue?
the acronym. I can't,
Yeah.
excuse my French. I can't fucking stand that acronym.
Yeah.
But the problem is Excel spreadsheets looks at numbers, not a Likert scale. So
Right.
you're looking
Right.
at a quantitative study, versus a social science study. And
Yeah.
that's the problem, is that a lot
Yeah.
of these a lot of these bigger groups are complete MBAs that know financial stuff. None
Yeah.
of them are MBAs that took leadership track,
Yeah.
and they would understand the difference.
Yeah.
And it brings up another point, and I feel,
Yeah.
and I'd like to get your opinion. I feel as if a lot of people are shamed for leaving instead of interrogated. Why are you leaving?
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Um, so I follow the question. Just like that, people don't that exit interviews aren't being done, or what was?
Well,
Sorry,
no,
Blair. I don't know if I followed.
that, like when I left, they told me that
Yeah.
everyone's replaceable. They didn't ask me,
Oh.
why are you leaving?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And that is, I think there's such good. In fact, I was just talking to a friend of mine who, she's the she's the director, mentorship and leadership, education for, for a big corporation. And she's doing exit interviews with everybody now. And it's like, there's so much, like, if we just, even in leaving, like you said, like the opposite, I can just say, look, I know you're leaving. Like, I respect that. Like, what, to, I know we had an opportunity to, to talk while you were here, but like, what else could we do? Like, what did,
Yeah.
what,
What could have been done
not
differently?
even, yeah, what could have been done differently? And not, and again, not trying to make you guilty, But like the other thing is though, is that if I haven't built that relationship of trust, and that this concept of mattering, like if I don't think as an employee that I matter to you as my leader, like during an exit interview, like what information am I going to tell you other than, like, am I going to give you anything, potentially, worthwhile? But like, but that listening, and that everybody is replaceable. I mean, it's the opposite of mattering.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry you went through that.
oh yeah, but
But yeah, exit interview. Go ahead.
exit interviews are huge.
Yeah.
And is there any part of the system you can think of that actually benefits from veterinarians being overwhelmed and shamed?
Yeah. No.
No.
I mean, no. I mean, maybe in the short term, and let me say like maybe in the short term that makes me work, squeezes the last 10% of whatever I had left, and then I'm cooked. But that's also, one of the things that I see, and, I did work with, a corporate group, great group. But what was interesting was, is just the mindset of it's quarter over quarter. Like you're like the things that we're talking about, like for instance, we started talking about QPR, and then we just talked about exit interviews, and exit interviews they're not quite the QPR. I'm not trying to be trite, but to your point of like, why aren't we doing stuff in the back is, that concept of stay interviews. Like, am I talking to my team members more than once a year, like for their annual review, that I just sit down and go, okay, you're getting a 5% raise. You did good here. What are your goals for next year? Okay, we'll see if we can make that happen. I appreciate you. Bye. Like that does nothing. But those stay interview, like, is that multiple times, even a month, like birds on a wire, like, how are you doing? What's going on? What do you need? How can I help you? And like you said, is that that concept of, if it's just smoldering, if I catch you here,
Right.
we might be able to do something. But if I'm cooked, once we
it.
hit burnout and we're cooked, it's like, dude, I can't think. I can't be here anymore. Like,
And
when we're starting to think like, I want to walk out.
Right.
Like, any of us who felt that way, like, I mean, over and over, like, once you get there, I mean, that's tough. Yeah. Go ahead, man.
No, do you know of a study that's been done? Because I could not find one while I was doing all my research
Yeah.
of actual veterinarians that have burned out that have returned successfully.
Not a study of one. I know, I mean, I am one,
I
but
am one too.
yeah. And it's interesting too, like mine was one of, I mean, I had an alcohol and substance use disorder that was, and which goes back to, when we were talking about childhood trauma and all that kind of stuff. But I needed to, I just needed some skills to navigate the profession. And then also I was able to, what it allowed me to do was see what was my issue and what was the system's issue. Because I worked at a practice that, was very busy. We had three exam rooms. I think we had 5 or 6 doctors. We had a 1-to-1 tech doctor ratio. And I just remember like being, it was like 15-minute appointments. And I'm like holding a dog, like with one hand, like typing up an estimate, and then going in the room, and then I'm pulling blood and, doing all this stuff. And I'm like, man, I'm so tired. And I'm like, oh, it's just me, and I would think, oh, it's just me. It's my thinking. And it was interesting, that Dalai Lama, reference that I made, like just seeing there's only so much that skills of resiliency can overcome systemic issues. And in true ADHD fashion, I squirreled quite a bit there. So you just pull the truck back on the road for us. I'd appreciate it.
Oh no, that's why I love talking to you, because you and I
Yeah.
can go back and forth,
Yeah.
and it will be all over the place, but it
Right.
will make sense to us.
Right. Sorry, everyone. Yeah. Total sense to us.
Yeah.
Man.
And
Yeah.
why is it in veterinary medicine we don't call out toxicity like we call out bad medicine?
Yeah. So I'm going to say something about toxicity. My friend Ron Sosa and I had a long talk about this a while back. And I think he's really kind of taking the ball and running with this. Is what if toxic people what if they're those people like that we were talking about, childhood trauma, things that happen to them that change their brain, that, like, and it's not to excuse the behavior, but it's like, what if that was, the the underlying cause. Now, a toxic environment, that's where we got to look at the leader. Like, that's where I've got to ask myself, if there's gossip and there's complaining and stuff going on and there's infighting, first thing, if I'm the leader, is saying, what did I do, what part have I played to help facilitate this? What am I doing or not doing? What kind of environment have I created that, we're doing this? And it's not self-flagellation, like that I'm taking all of that on, but as a leader, that better be my first question should always be, what part did I play in this? So, and let me ask a question back to you, as far as calling out toxicity, like individual behaviors of toxicity or overall toxic environment. Like, what were you, when you asked it, what are you
No,
thinking?
I'm talking about clinics in general. Like,
Okay.
we're all guilty of saying, oh man, I wouldn't bring a dead cockroach to that clinic or
Yeah.
to that doctor, or, oh my goodness, can you believe this person did that? When you read about like some sort of case that's in front of the state board or
Mm-hmm.
stuff
Right,
like
right,
that, we call that out. We're like, that person was stupid, that person was
right, right.
negligent, oh my gosh, they should lose their license. But if a doctor's an asshole, or there is
Yeah.
no leadership,
Yeah.
or a hospital is running out great staff over and over and over again, the
Yeah.
perpetual we're hiring sign
Yeah.
that you see on Rue, stuff
Yep.
like
Right,
that,
right. Yeah.
we don't call that out. We don't say anything about it. We're just like, oh well, I'm just going to avoid that place.
I
Are
mean,
we trying to
yes.
are we trying to make them go bankrupt, or should we literally look them in the eye and be like, you need to change or else you're going to be cooked?
No, I mean, it's so that part, that I get where you're saying that. I think there's two answers to that. As an employee, or as a as someone in the workforce, like I can vote with my feet, and so if that place is not good for me, or it's not, if it's a toxic environment or whatever, or I see that, like you said, like you see that rotating, they've always got the ad out, or whatever is done now. Like, it used to be, when always, if there's always an ad in, in Javma, or there's always a
You avoid it like a
ad,
plague.
and what, yeah, you avoid it. Like, that's what they told us, years ago. And so I can choose not to be part of that. Now, the interesting thing is if, I guess, is like, what would be the way that we could have a healthy, caring conversation with whoever that would be, if it's the owner, is, how do we do that as a colleague? Is like, do we, is that a local veterinary association question? Is it, if I'm hearing stuff, secondhand, obviously, like from people that used to work in another hospital, like, does it behoove me, or do I go, talk to my colleague and just say, hey, like, I just wanted to touch bit, like, see how things were going, like, if you needed help, or what was going on.
It's almost an intervention.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that's kind of where I'm going, is like, thinking about, and then with an intervention, is, if I'm not ready to hear that feedback, or take your willingness to help me, I'm going to be defensive as shit, as stuff, it's like, I'm I'm going to defend it. I'm going to, F you, like, get out, mind your own business, whatever. Like, I could do that. Or, it's just, am I ready to hear the message? And I think that's the challenging thing. What I would say is, what's interesting is, I go back to, there's a, there's two tools that you're probably familiar with. But one is the stages of change, where they used it for people with, with smoking and behavioral issues. And certainly, like, when I was in treatment, I could definitely tell, where I fell, in hindsight, where I fell on that scale.
Mhm.
As far as is that person what they call pre-contemplation? Like, I don't even know that there's a problem. I'm not aware of any problem, and I'm not going to listen to you tell me that there's a problem. And it's like how we communicate, you know, like you would think that you just go, man, you can't see this. Like, this is a problem. And that communication style doesn't work. All we can do is try to lay some information in front of them and see if they pick it up. Like, that's all we can do. And then again, then it gets into time, which is the other frustrating, you know, thing, is to do some of these things that we need to connect with another human being on a level, you know, that it takes. Like, this goes for coaching employees. You know, sometimes we might have a, you know, quote unquote toxic employee, and we don't use that term. You know, again, we try to say the old, you know, like with trauma, instead of what's wrong with you, like what happened to you. But even that amount of coaching, I mean, that takes, you know, if I'm going to coach that person through some of that behavior, that's going to take a couple hours a week, you know, of me sitting down and, you know, and going through some things with her, and the person has to be open to it. Anyway, that's,
Well,
I don't think I squirreled, but it's like,
no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Because my intervention I had, but my case study was N of 1, is when
Yeah.
my manager and my wife sat me down and is
Yeah.
like, and it was in 2006. And
Yeah.
they were like, if you don't change your ways,
Yeah.
if you don't change how hard you're working these people, if you don't change what you say, or at least how you say it, you're going to lose everybody, and this place is
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
And it was the most eye-opening come to Jesus talk I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And I still remember it to this day. And I praise the Lord that they had, well, my wife would have the guts to do it. I don't think my manager would. But the two of them together were able to sit me down and say that. And it was
Yeah.
a bitter pill to swallow, but
Yeah.
it made me a better leader and a better person overall.
Yeah. And you
So
listen.
do you know of
Oh,
any stories where techs or anyone tried to speak up and they got fired or shamed for doing so?
I mean, just anecdotally, like, but I don't know of, because I think we started the talk about Is that where we start? No, we were talking about calling out toxicity.
Yeah.
No, I mean, just that. I mean, you know, I've got one of my great friends is Tasha McNerney, and she's amazing. Like, I mean, you talk about entrepreneur, like, she does veterinary anesthesia nerds, and she speaks all over the world, and just well respected. And this is an area, you know, that's professionally of interest for her. In fact, I think she's getting her master's in organizational leadership from Penn now, because of some of the experiences that she had, you know, and you know, and she's called me, you know, in the past, like, you know, having issues with that, like with doctors. And I think that's probably the one overall that I've seen more than anything is, you know, again, we're so hesitant to correct doctors' behavior. It's like, damn it, like, why? Like, that's who that's who we should focus on, because like, all of us that are doctors, like, in the hospital, we have an outsized impact on our team members. Like, if I say something off color, and a technician or an assistant says the same thing to that person, it is, by the nature of the position that I have in the hospital, it's going to have more of an impact on that person, more often than not. Like, I mean, it just is what it shows us. But leaders, like, I mean, there is a study that shows leaders have more of an impact on the mental health of the people that they lead than their doctors and their therapists. And they are on equal footing as the domestic partners of our people. So that's crazy.
But it makes sense.
And what a sense of responsibility. I mean, that's where, you know, we talk about self-awareness and stuff like that. And I'm like, you know, if I'm starting to get like this in the clinic, because we all do, like, I'm watching my behavior, and then, you know, and sometimes I gotta go up to one of the technicians after work, and, you know, if I'm not able to catch him in that moment, and just say, look, I really need to apologize to you. Like, you know, I was short with my it doesn't excuse the behavior, but I want you to know that you were right. I was wrong. And so just an amends like that can make a big difference. Yeah.
When I look at leaders, though, I look at leaders as, I mean, when you look at just, we'll keep it at vet clinics. When you
Okay.
look at leaders of veterinary clinics, they are the parental head of the clinic because you
Yeah.
spend
Yeah.
more time with who you work with than your actual family when you're a
Yeah.
full-time veterinarian,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
So that study makes 1,000%
Yeah.
sense to me. When you say
Yeah.
that, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
That would have been a paper I probably would have read and then gone, duh, but
Yeah. Right. But it's that.
but
Yeah. But it's like it seems intuitive, like but my God, of course. And then it's like, well, shit, wow. Then I start thinking about, wow, like what are all the things that I've done, and like I don't know, try not to go down that rabbit hole, but like how can I be better tomorrow? Now that I know this, it's like Maya Angelou said, it's like now that I know it, I'm gonna be better, try to be better next time. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's
yeah.
something to that effect.
Well, I interviewed my mentor a couple of episodes ago, and he basically said, Dwight D. Eisenhower used to look himself in the mirror every night, and he would ask himself, "Was I the best version of me I could be today?"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think a
Yep.
lot of veterinarians, especially veterinary leaders, need to heed that advice.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep. And I
I
think, yeah.
if
Well,
they
I was gonna
can't,
say,
if they can't handle honesty, especially to
yeah.
themselves, is
Yeah.
their clinic technically safe psychologically?
Yeah. Right. No, 100%. And the answer is probably and most likely no. But the other thing that I do see, with veterinarians, I mean, it's in people in general, but so we have a tool called the Perma 4 Plus, a tool for veterinary workplaces that is a comprehensive assessment for veterinary workplaces. One of the things that it looks at, though, is it looks at the level of self compassion that both individuals and leaders have. And one of the things that we found is that we don't have as much, but where we're at with the data that we have, I'll say, is I thought for correlation to burnout. So we measure psychosocial factors, we measure job overload, we measure all these things. I thought it was going to be job overload. I mean, that's what it is in everywhere else. Exhaustion, job overload, whatever we want. That's the biggest driver for burnout. And in veterinary professionals, like one tick like above exhaustion is self-criticism. And the reason why I say that is, to your point, yes, we have to be able to ask ourselves those questions and also be able to answer those questions realistically, and not over personalize things. Because what I do see is with leaders, it's like, oh, I'm a horrible leader. I'm a horrible I'm such a bad. It's like, no, like we need to learn how to properly assess what part did we play, in a situation. And I like to use the percentage point, thing. Like I was 10%, I had 20%, to do with the outcome of the situation. It just helps me, kind of see where we're at. But when we it's we were talking about that all or nothing thinking. If I'm always right, I'm the leader, that's on one side, or I'm a huge POS, like I shouldn't even be doing this, like I'm so bad at this, and that goes for practicing veterinary medicine too, with the way we think, but that's something that I think is important, is that self-awareness, like you said, is so important, of asking ourselves, genuinely starting with us, asking ourselves that question, but also being able to do that in a way that is honest and truthful and real, and that we're not over personalizing things and taking on too much of the blame when it wasn't ours.
So, what boat are you in? Are you in the boat that
Yeah.
you believe emotional exhaustion is burnout, or you go by the true definition that burnout is emotional exhaustion, lack of self worth, and despondency?
Yeah. Well, so I guess the definition of burnout that I know, or the components of burnout, or it was exhaustion, cynicism, um and poor performance, or something
Lack
like
of
that. And
self-worth.
that's
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
okay. Yeah. I mean, I definitely. So I definitely believe that. I mean, the data supports it. What is really fascinating though is like, so we were talking about, like, when I first got into doing this, it was burnout. Burnout is a systems issue. Like, burnout is, it has to do with job capacity, job overload, all the elements of the system. And I remember like, not wanting that to be true, but like, just, I guess, from my own experience, I was like, I don't know, man. I make things freaking harder than they need to be sometimes. Like, with where I'm at upstairs, and I exhaust a lot of energy to where I think bad things about clients, or I misinterpret this, and I make things a lot. And that's where I do think, and again, our data does support that, with the self criticism, but just that our thinking also plays a part, in in burnout, or in the exhaustion, part. And I guess it would kind of fit under exhaustion. Well, it fits under cynicism too. um, but yeah,
Well, I've been seeing a lot of lack of empathy, uh,
yeah,
especially
that's,
as I'm out
yep.
doing relief work. Do you
Hmm.
blame? Do you think it's a 50-50 between toxic workplace and burnout, or do you think one
Mm.
way is heavier?
So I think that's a really good question. Now I'll go back to also getting to say, in in our clinic in 2019, um, we had a meeting one time, and one of the technicians stood up and said, "Dr. Richmond, I just want you to know that I come to this clinic, I come to work to get away from the world." Like, we really, I mean, we were very intentional about creating not a nice environment, like a positive, healthy environment. We were able to correct each other, in healthy ways, and do all that. We didn't talk about clients. We didn't talk about one another. COVID hits. And probably about 4 months into COVID, we started noticing that we were like getting snappy with one another, or starting to talk bad about clients and what have you. And so in that situation, like, it was a really good example for me how these external factors, of overload hit us. And so, in that case, I would say, it was job overload. I mean, we were seeing tons, I mean, everybody's going through all that kind of stuff. But I think the emotional, 50-50, I don't know if it's, I think they both play a part. I just don't know. I don't know that I would be brave. Well, brave's not even the word. I just don't know if it's 50-50 or not. But I definitely know that I would definitely go out on a limb and say there's definitely, my upstairs, my thinking, how I process things, how I interpret things, and then also the external, stuff that's playing a part with burnout.
Yeah, I guess I just found another research study I could do, right?
Yeah.
Look at lack of empathy as the dependent variable, and look at burnout and toxicity as
Yeah. Yep.
independence.
Yeah, because like, you'll be in a good, calm environment, and then, but you've got somebody that's just like, oh, this client, this person, this,
Right.
and that's not necessarily burnout. That's our thinking, those are the cognitive
That's emotional
distortions.
labor,
Yeah.
right? Are you
And
are you
that's,
going to be
yeah.
are you going to be a true deep actor and truly show your true feelings, or are you surface acting and just putting on a show? And I mean, putting on a show takes more energy,
Oh yeah.
which
Yeah.
which
Wearing
people
that
don't really
mask.
get,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So, well, I thank you for the next study. So, yeah. So, two more questions, and
Yeah.
then, I, obviously, every time I talk to you, I come up with a whole new list of stuff
Right.
I want
Right.
to talk to you about. So, you
Yeah.
might be a perpetual guest on this, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
phenomenal because I love talking to you. Because our brains, it's nice to
Yeah.
have another brain that thinks like mine,
Yeah.
on the chaos part. Um,
Right. Right.
So, what is one truth that most of us know in veterinary medicine, but we tend to hide?
Hmm. Hmm. Man, the hiding part. That's the
And we're hiding it because we're either
yeah.
afraid to say something or we just think we're the only ones who are thinking it.
Yeah, yeah. I would so the just in general, I would just say our fears. Like is and I know that's a broad thing, but like fearing the unknown, fearing success, fearing failure, and then thinking everybody else has all their shit together, and I'm the one, that's just full of fear. I think that's one thing that
That sounds like
that's where
imposter syndrome.
yeah, yeah. So yes, imposter syndrome. Um, Also, it's where the power of vulnerability comes in, especially as a leader. Where I can talk about some of the fears or the thought processes that I've had, with my team members, and not going, oh my gosh, I don't even know what I'm doing. I shouldn't even be the lead. Not that kind of not even that's vulnerability, but just yeah, sometimes I'll get a case like that. I'll be fearful that, I'm making the wrong decision, or, what the client may think, or, whatever it is just, sharing that human experience with the team. And I think that does then bring those, it allows the hiding of that truth, to be pulled away, and that I then feel more comfortable, sharing when I'm not sure about something. And we found that, I mean, you can talk about all the these leadership tools and communication tools, and leaders being vulnerable first and often, has been one of the most powerful things in that I've seen in veterinary medicine.
Okay, and the last question, and this goes out to
Yeah,
all the early career grads, people graduating vet school. If they're going in and interviewing at a clinic and hopefully doing a working interview,
yeah.
what signs should they look for psychological safety? Because I
So
know, I know, I know they'll put up like a front, like everyone will act
yeah,
like, like, oh, we're so excited to have you here. This place is so awesome. But are they? Most of the
yeah,
time, it's total bull. So, are
yeah.
there true telltale signs they should look for?
Potentially. So it's a good, so one of the things that I've put out there is ask ask that owner, ask the manager, hey, would you, like, if you feel comfortable, would you tell me about the last time, like, a mistake was made in the hospital, like, and how that was handled, like how did you handle it as a leader, like what actions were taken. um the reason why is that if the answer is systems first, then you've probably got a good chance of some degree of psychological safety. Is that if a mistake is made, and it's not that leader isn't burning somebody to the ground, like in the in the middle of treatment. And again, first question as a leader, what part did I play, or what part did the system play, or what do we not have in place that didn't allow this person to perform at the best level. I think that's the versus, oh yeah, we had a technician, she didn't know how to do math. She gave a big dose of whatever anesthetic drug. They gave the wrong drug to a patient and it died. So we fired her. Like that, like that. If I hear that,
Run.
then it's yeah, then run. Because again, then it's what have I not? I've put, and we talk about this. One of the things that we say, in our hospital is we never want to put a person in a position of responsibility without giving them the tools to be successful. And so, like, if that person is struggling with medical math, which is hard as crap, like when we're first learning it, like, do we have what have we put in place to allow that person to learn? Like, what? Obviously, we want to have a backup system where somebody's checking, double checking, maybe triple checking things. And
Make a
those
dosage
are,
chart. Put it up.
yeah,
Put it up on the
right.
wall.
Any of those,
Use
right.
Chat
Any of those,
GPT.
Chat GPT, right, right. But any of those,
Yeah.
any of those things, could be in place where, it's like, yeah, Janie really went through a challenging part. She had administered it. We looked at it and realized, we didn't have this in place, and I should have been able to give her more education. We got our counseling, because we all know what like losing a patient is like. Just something that sounds more supportive versus solely blaming the individual. I just think it is something, if you get that level of response, um, that that it gives you an idea of what to expect, because that's about the most the shit can hit the fan. Is
Yeah.
like a big medical error. Like, if as long as there's not something legal going on or what have you. But and then if they're open talking about it, then that's showing vulnerability. And they're not blaming it. They're like, yeah, no, it's a great question. As a leader, this happened. I really had to think about what part I play. All that kind of stuff. So I think that's helpful if you can get them to say that.
Well, Phil, I want to thank you so much for giving us your
Oh
time
yeah,
again.
Gene.
Oh, dude, we have more that I definitely want to go down with you.
Yeah, right.
And to all the listeners out there, my personal best way to get a hold of Phil always is on LinkedIn. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, LinkedIn is a
Certainly, you can
wonderful
email me
tool.
too. We'll put my emails in the show notes as
Okay,
well.
yeah,
I haven't been on his LinkedIn as much as I used to.
yeah. And I can tell you right now, as a researcher, and academician, build your LinkedIn. It is
Yeah,
crazy how good it gets.
100%.
Your
Yep.
LinkedIn is so big; it's bigger than TikTok. It's bigger than Insta.
Yeah.
Your LinkedIn from a professional identity is enormous. So, and I just want to thank the listeners. And my take home right now is that if you don't take care of me, we and us doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And that was one thing you said, Michelle. Want her, me, we, and us. And
Yeah.
you got to take care of me first, and don't
Mhm.
be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't build brick barriers, and just make sure you communicate so everyone knows where you're at. And if you're at a place where you believe that if you communicate, you will be finger pointed and shamed, you're not at the right place.
Not the right place.
Not at the right place. Okay, Phil, you stick on
All
after
right.
this, but to the listeners, thank you so much. Hey, hit me up on any of the socials if you have any questions. Definitely, if you have any questions for Phil for our next episode, I'll make sure we have them back. And thank you again for listening.
Thanks, everybody.